Welcome to the Standard of Truth podcast. In this podcast, Dr. Gerrit Dirkmaat and Dr. Richard Leduc explore the early history of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the life and teachings of the prophet Joseph Smith. They examine the original historical sources and provide context for events of the past. They approach the history of the Church with faith, expertise, and humor.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Standard of Truth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Gerrit Dirkmaat, and I'm joined by my friend, Dr. Richard Leduc, although he's changed his name on our little studio here to Dr. Richard Andrew Leduc, Senior. I'm not entirely sure about why you need the senior. Is there something about Andrew? I don't know.
I can't walk the streets of Montreal without being confused with other Dr. Leducs. There's actually a biochemist in Montreal who's Dr. Richard Leduc, actually. He's he's the far more successful Dr. Richard Leduc of the Dr. Richard Leducs. So
now your mission should be to convert him so that we can get a better Dr. Leduc in your seat.
You know, that would be great. In fact, he wouldn't even have to be converted to be better than me. But there's no question. He's just
given Catholic doctrines. Like I start teaching, and he's like, "That's the reason why we pray to the saints for intercession." I mean, assuming if he's from Montreal, I don't know. Is he French?
He's outrageously French. Yeah,
he's Monty Python French, is what you're saying.
He's quite accomplished, brilliant. Obviously not related. Anyway, well, Gerrit, we've got a fun, action-packed episode to really dig into here. We're gonna roll out a brand new segment that we're gonna do. That I don't think we're gonna ever do it again.
Richard likes to roll out segments and then tell me that we're gonna do them every week.
No,
we're not doing them every week, folks. We barely turn the record button on.
I think we did a Rich Leduc top 5 twice. I don't think so, Gerrit. I think this one's going to catch on because this one, as I've often said, I'm a man of the people.
I feel like you're just avoiding talking about the Lakers losing to the Timberwolves in that series.
That was unfortunate, and I don't know why. I hate the Knicks, and they keep rallying. And it's not working out for me. You know, it's just
Richard
really
he's a study of contradictions. His favorite baseball team is the Yankees.
It's true.
His most hated basketball team is the Knicks. So literally the same fans that he's sitting next to at a Yankee game, he hates them the other half of the year.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the case. So when I was a kid, in Idaho, we had no professional team, and so we had no cable, and so I watched whatever team.
I like how you thought you had to tell people that Idaho doesn't have a professional team. That's interesting. Why don't you educate all of our listeners in Ghana as to the fact that Idaho doesn't have a professional team? Ghana does have one, though. That's where we're at.
Didn't they beat us or did we tie them in World Cup 20 years ago? I can't remember. Anyway, by the way, Gerrit, I don't know if you're following the betting lines on the popes. That has been quite fun. Now, again, we do not endorse gambling. We'd like to recommend everyone to President Hinckley's conference address on gambling.
I mean, of all the gambling I don't endorse, betting on a religious outcome is the gambling I'm least okay with.
Oh, I'm offended for sure, but I'm following it closely. I believe that the Pope from, is it the Philippines? I think is second or third.
The Cardinal, you mean? Because if he's already the Pope, then the best way to get the odds right is if the white smoke's already coming out, and then you're like, you know what? I'm going to put my money on this guy.
Well, so they've gathered, right? So yeah. I mean,
they've set up some black smoke already, so that means they voted and they didn't get the 2/3.
Okay, there we go. I think that Pope Francis, something like he was responsible for placing almost 2/3 of the voting, because I think you're under 80 years old as a cardinal.
You have to be under 80 as a cardinal to vote, and you have to have a 2/3.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm very excited. I've been following the lines. They're hilarious. So anyway, what were we talking about? Sports?
I can't remember,
Anyway.
but I'd like to see the lines that are like created by Calvinist theologians. Like, what's their line on who
Well,
the next
the
pope's gonna
Calvinist
be?
theologian waits for the outcome and said, yeah, that's what God always wanted.
Yeah, it's true. How do I know
Yeah.
that God wanted this? It happened, didn't it? Okay.
Well, Gerrit, we can kick things off with the Phoebe, and I'm telling you, this thing that we're going to do, it's going to be a weekly hit. I really believe
it's not
it.
happening.
Bottom of my heart.
Most of this podcast is Richard trying to make me do more work and me saying, I'm drowning Richard. Please listen to me. And him saying, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
Oh, this one's got a catchy name to it, though. I think.
Wait,
think
I don't even
many
know
of
the name.
names,
You're inventing this.
Many of the names
you
aren't
are
as
witnessing Richard inventing something real time. We have legitimately not talked about this at all. He's inventing this. He's like Pholastus Hurlbutt with the origins of the Book of Mormon. He's just
I have signed affidavits. I have signed affidavits that people cry out, Gerrit. Anyway, this first one comes to us from Elder and Sister Quinn. Hello, doctors. I'm currently serving as the mission health advisor in the Illinois Historic Sites mission, which is a dream mission, Nauvoo and Carthage. We'll be seeing you in about a month, so that's very exciting. I've enjoyed listening to your podcast while I iron my shirts and do chores around the house. I have learned a great deal and have felt the spirit and enjoy the humor. My wife serves in the sewing room in the Nauvoo working on historic dresses, shirts, and accessories. A link to premium content would be appreciated. So, obviously, we're kissing up to the Quinns as we're going to be there.
Yeah, we're hopeful that the Quinns will help us with any tour-related things that we need. And, sometimes we get asked, well, can a senior missionary get yeah, sure. Hey, look, if you're willing to serve God as a missionary, you're getting a link. Now, you won't want the link, but you're getting it.
Okay, so this next email comes to us from Christy. Hello, Doctors Dirkmott and Leduc. Not sure either is spelled correctly. Well, Christy, Gerrit's was spelled right. Mine wasn't. So there you go.
You know what? I think that's about right.
Yeah,
I think that's about right.
That's good. I have been a long-time listener to your podcast, but this is my first time reaching out. I want to start off by thanking both of you for what you are doing with this podcast. It has changed my life, my testimony, and my confidence. Oh. I now feel when church history is brought up. I love listening to your podcast and really appreciate the ability I have to use your education and knowledge for my benefit. The first podcast I listened to that really stuck with me was the Word of Wisdom, one done a long time ago. It was an incredible view of the Word of Wisdom, and I have shared it with numerous people since then, though I am sure no one else has bothered to listen. Well, you know what, Kristy, you're spot on.
Rachel's mom probably listened to it a couple of times. My mom, Renee, probably did.
Yes. Anyways, I was asked to speak last Sunday for this coming Sunday, Mother's Day, due to a change in speaking assignments, and am scrambling a bit for prep. While I'm neither a missionary nor giving birth, I am hoping...
That's funny.
That's very funny. I am hoping you can possibly answer my question, though with how quickly you don't answer emails, this won't help me at all for this week. The subject I was asked to speak on is standing in holy places, with the reference to Doctrine and Covenants, section 45, verse 32. I started, which by the way is the section for gospel doctrine study this week, or I guess we're in.
That's by chance, because I mean that's not really a Mother's Day lesson. Do you think that ward assigns their sacrament meeting talks based upon where you're at in Come Follow Me?
I believe I mentioned on the podcast that I once attended my nephew's mission farewell that was on Easter Sunday, and the topic was tithing. So, I don't know how, some people zig, others zag, you're kind of doing your own thing. I started doing some digging in my week prep, And I have week.
She means week
W-E-E-K.
long, not like this is week.
Yes.
What
yes.
the
But
answer you're about to get
Probably
is
both.
week, as in WEAK.
Yes. That I have for the talk, and to be honest, I can't find much about this phrase. I didn't Yoohoo it. Now that is one of the better search engines, by the way.
Yeah.
Of all chocolate drinks, you're going to find most answers there of any of the chocolate drinks. But I did Google stand in holy places, and the main reference came up were LDS references, which is good. But it got me thinking of other religious uses of that phrase or something similar. I like to reach out to my circle when I'm preparing to speak to get insight from my sources. And through that circle, I asked some Christian friends of mine what their thoughts were. And the main response was, I have never heard that phrase before. So I'm assuming it So
That's great research. Hey, what do you guys think about stand in holy places? Get away from me, Mormon.
She's asking all of her Baptist friends, and they're like, "Yeah, no, what's that?"
Was it the word faith, and was it the word grace? And if it wasn't those two, move along.
But if you have any insight into it, or if you even wanted to do a pre-show for Section 45, I would appreciate it. As I've said previously, my expectations for this response to this are low, and if by chance it does get answered, my expectations for that answer are even lower. Because,
that's what we need. That's why we're answering it, because you have no expectations.
Because I listen to you and know. In all seriousness, thank you for all that you do. Always know you have a solid fan and listener deep in the heart of Texas. This is from Christy. And so, Gerrit, this is the thing. So, in the follow him, or the come follow me, and also follow him. Follow him actually follows come follow me,
which is a much better podcast.
Much better podcast. You should stop listening right now and go straight to a sports book that's picking popes. Anyway,
and on your way.
On your way. But so we started with the Doctrine and Covenants. We're studying that this year. We're to section 20. And the come follow me is to section 45 this week. So to Christy's question, which I thought was a good question, I would like to introduce a new segment where every week you just give, just give a little nugget, just a little quick hit that somebody that we would call now Christy's last minute prep. So
we're gonna name it after her.
Yeah. Christy's last minute prep. Standing in holy places, section 45. Give a little something so that someone sounds smart in Sunday school, which is the whole reason that you listen to church podcasts anyway. And go.
But for her, it's sacrament meeting. She has to sound extra
it's
smart.
higher stakes. There's no question it's higher stakes for Christy. Yeah.
Because, in Sunday school, you've just got all the people who, they don't have a calling to go somewhere else. So I say that because I'm perpetually in the Sunday school, but in sacrament meeting, especially on Mother's Day, meeting. Oh, yeah. Everybody's. I mean, what does your ward do for mothers on Mother's Day?
This year we're having the youth speak on different aspects of the divine role of mothers, and
mean, like, what presents do you give them? Like, do you hand out like a plant, or
we do a brisket? I don't know. And we do chocolates and then the elders quorum does like a full, like, they bring in a full meal, and they actually do a really nice job. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. I don't remember. I mean, our ward's done lots of different things, but so first of all, I mean, you recognize pretty quickly just by doing a Google search that this is not a phrase that is readily utilized by other Christians in the way that they talk about things. Now, that there is the most that Christians talk about it, and I know that it's not going to be the same type of thing. It is similar, right? So, Doctrine and Covenants section 45 is a lot of things in here are referencing the second coming, right? That the second coming is near. There's things that are going on. I mean, right after 32. I mean, which sounds like, great, stand in holy places. 33 is, and there shall be earthquakes in divers places and many desolations, and men will harden their hearts against me. And I'll take up the sword one against another. They'll kill one another. I mean, it's a revelation talking about the end times. So there are a couple of ways that you can look at this in the context, right, where it says, and there shall be men standing in that generation that shall not pass away till they see an overflowing scourge, for the desolating sickness shall cover the land. That verse 31 got quoted all the time during the COVID. They're like, oh, this is it. And then they selected a whole bunch of days in 2021, and spoiler alert, that didn't happen. The second coming didn't happen. But my disciples shall stand in a holy place and shall not be moved. This is actually, if we were looking at what it most directly resembles, it's Matthew chapter 24, where again, it's the same thing. In fact, many of these are very similar phrases of what's going to happen. When shall, the second coming happen? And it's verse 15 where it says, when you shall therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. Whoso readeth, let him understand. So it's not the same, but when Christians engage with this phraseology of stand in the holy place, they're not sure what it means. And there's a considerable amount of biblical interpretation where they take this phrase to mean the exact opposite of what we take it to mean in D&C 45. In D&C 45, we take it as the Lord saying to us, hey, if you see these signs, probably time to do what you're supposed to do. Right? Is that how you take it, Richard? I mean, not betting on popes, probably. I mean, but also, yes, betting on popes.
I'm not saying that we should bet on popes. I'm just saying I think it's interesting, the lines that they have right now. That's all that I'm saying.
I imagine those lines move every time smoke goes up that chimney, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. But yes, Gerrit. Yes, Gerrit. When it's apocalypse time, we should probably,
Well, so a pretty common interpretation of this, because they don't really know what that means. Now, especially among Protestant theologians, right? Because what is a Protestant theologian? What is one of the things that they are most repelled over? The idea that there's some kind of sacred place that, where there are relics or saints, right? So in Protestant thought, the development of the worship of relics and the worship of saints, I mean, not that Catholics worship relics, okay? For a Protestant, they feel like they are. The development of those things made them reject even the idea, basically, of, oh, here's a very sacred spot. Now, as a Protestant, you can still go to Israel, and those places are sacred because, that's where biblical things took place. But this kind of idea that there's a place you go to that is more holy than other places, that doesn't really fly very well in Protestantism, because that's putting a place between you and God. And so the only thing that really matters is, do you have faith in God? How do I stand in the holy place? Do I have faith in Jesus? Well, then I'm in the holy place right now. Wherever I am, that's the holy place because I have faith in Jesus. And so they often interpret this to be one of the signs, Matthew 24, where they say, when you therefore see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place. They will often argue this is a reference to the Romans placing their standards, like the Roman eagle and the signs of the legion, in the temple, defiling the temple. And that's how you know the destruction is about to happen. So they think it's referencing the destruction of Jerusalem in 70 AD. Again, this isn't everybody, but these are several commentaries that the stand is when you see these Roman standards placed in the temple, then you know that things are going to be destroyed. So they actually take it a very different way.
Yeah, the exact opposite.
Yeah, exactly. Not like, hey, you need to go to a holy place. And, that kind of makes sense for a Protestant theologian, right? I mean, one of your main deals is there is literally nothing between you and God. Well, what about this place where it's like closer to God? That place doesn't exist, right? So you could see why that interpretation might come about. I'm guessing that's not going to be very helpful for Kristy in her sacrament meeting talk. I will say this, however, the idea of standing in a holy place, the first thing that came to mind for me is probably the first thing that came to your mind too, Richard, when you hear it, is what happened when Moses goes up to the burning bush, right? And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. This is Exodus chapter 3. And he said, here I am. And he said, draw not hither, put off thy shoes from thy feet, for the place whereon thou standest is holy ground. So this idea that there could be a holy place certainly exists in the Old Testament. And it's there where Moses is communing with God. One thing that has come to my mind, and again, I don't know if this is what is intended, but boy, so I don't want to teach any false doctrine, but everyone always says that right before the next thing you know, false doctrine. And I'm not an expert in this. I obviously have colleagues who are experts in the Hebrew Bible and in the Old Testament. And but one image that comes to my mind that I think is at least applicable, maybe it's not what was intended, but it certainly is helpful for people to think. In the Temple of Solomon and in the tabernacle as well, there were multiple divisions in the places where people went. Well, the place that was inside of the sanctuary, but just outside of the holiest place, on the other side of the veil of the temple, the Holy of Holies is where the Ark of the Covenant was kept, right? So that was the most sacred place in the temple, and only the high priest could go there, and only once a year, right? The Holy of Holies, you don't go in there. So what's the closest we can get to the Holy of Holies? Well, it's this other area that is actually called the holy place. So you have the holy place, and then inside the veil, you have what's called the most holy place, or the Holy of Holies. If we were looking for some symbolism, the idea that what do you need to do to prepare for the second coming, which is what D&C 45 is all about, to stand in the holy place is to literally stand at the veil of the temple. And just on the other side is for the people of Israel, the Ark of the Covenant, but which is of course a symbolism of Christ. I'm not a theologian. I certainly don't have the ability to declare doctrine. I barely have the ability to declare, where, you should put the smart money on popes. But it is something that I think about, is that if you think of that tabernacle or Solomon's temple, if you think about the fact that where you are when you're the closest to the most holy place that you're allowed to be, it's right there at the veil in what is called the holy place. So that may or may not be helpful. I do think if you can extrapolate out, what's the whole point of Doctrine and Covenants section 45? It's a revelation on the second coming. And so why are the disciples to stand in holy places? Because things are about to get real, right? That things are going to be fraught with peril, but the disciples who stand in holy places shall not be moved. Well, that's the same thing that President Nelson has said. You need to be going to the temple. You need to be in the temple. You need to spend time in the temple. If you want to be prepared for the second coming of Jesus, then you need to go to the temple. And I think that's exactly the best message that you can get from Doctrine and Covenants section 4532. What are your thoughts on that, Richard?
I think that's great. And this has been Kristy's last minute prep.
Okay. Wait, wouldn't we have to license it with Kristy, or we're not going to tell anyone which Kristy
we didn't say
is?
Her last name. Yeah, no, we're gonna take her idea. We're gonna steal it. By the way, on March 23rd, there was a significant spike for a Cardinal Pizzaballa. I'm pretty sure I'm pronouncing that exactly correctly.
Cardinal Pizza. That's
Pizzaballa, Pizzaballa.
Pizzaballa.
Yeah, I'm sure that's not offensive. So
we've just offended every Italian listening.
Yeah, the Italians were huge in Italy.
Oh yeah, one place where Latter-day Saints and Standard Truth Podcast is just wrecking the numbers. Italy.
He shot up to 47.1% odds on March 23rd. And now he's come back down to earth a little bit. He's at 9.3. And the former secretary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The Secretary of State. He's now the leader in the clubhouse at 28%. But very excited, Gerrit. Yeah. Can't wait for that white smoke. Thank you very much to Kristy, and again, that has been Kristy's last minute prep. Next email comes to us.
He just invented something on the fly.
I'm telling you, the people cry out, and your answer was great. By the way, that was, much better than the average crap that we do. But that was really good. I like that
as opposed to anything else we've ever said.
That was good. This email comes to us from friend of the show, Tanya. In recent home church discussions, we noted how God ensured how multiple witnesses of to the resurrected Savior, both in two scriptural witnesses of the Bible and Book of Mormon, but also in early church history events like Sidney Rigdon actually seeing the resurrected Savior with Joseph Smith, giving credibility to Joseph in that he wasn't the only person claiming to have seen Jesus and building a case for his prophetic calling. Not only that, there are witnesses of the ongoing restoration going back to the beginning. The first vision, though no one witnessed the actual event other than Joseph, his mother was able to clock the event by corroborating their exchange immediately thereafter. The visit of Moroni, again, a personal experience, but with family members corroborating the events. The Book of Mormon and translation of the plates, Emma, Martin Harris, Oliver and David as scribes, among others who could testify the existence of the plates, the three witnesses, Oliver, David, and Martin. The 8 witnesses, the restoration of the priesthood, vision of the celestial kingdom and degrees of glory. There are so many miraculous events that were witnessed by others. It got me thinking of the truth claims of other religious movements. Did you, by the way, as an aside, did you see there was there's a fairly popular atheist that makes his way around Instagram, and he was asked on a Christian podcast which, if any, religion he would join, any Christian religion. Did you see that?
Yes, I did.
It was great. He said Mormon, and everyone on the podcast laughed, and then he cited all the reasons. One
of them even said, that's not even Christian.
Yeah, I know. It was funny. And actually, many of the things he cited were some of the things that Tanya mentions here. It got me thinking of the truth claims of other religious movements, especially the immediate historical offshoots of the church, as well as modern offshoots with former members of the church, particularly one that rhymes with Snenverduffer and the other that rhymes with Jaren Wefs.
I think Joran is probably a little more.
Oh, Joran Wefs, yes. Jaren is actually a name. We have claims to be the true mouthpiece of God and know His will. Do any of the churches that have split off from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, either in the early days of the Restoration or modern movement, have multiple witness events or claims that laid the foundation of their religious organizations or their teachings has any other religion, for that matter, experienced such a long list of event after event, building on each other with multiple credible witnesses.
Well, that's pretty heavy. I mean, for our mid range, this isn't part of Kristy's Corner, right? So this is more of the
Kristy's Corner. That's a whole new segment that we should also start. But Kristy's Last Minute Prep is the name of the segment. Gerrit.
Okay. Well, it's a great
Kristy's
question.
Corner. I like Kristy's Corner, actually.
And honestly, it has the alliteration. That's the thing.
It's good. Yeah, right.
And it doesn't.
You spell corner with a K, by the way.
Oh yeah, for sure. But with a backwards R. It's just as a way of giving it a little something.
Corner.
Yeah.
So much better.
So this is actually one of my more favorite aspects of the Restoration to discuss, because when you're talking with someone who dismisses the Restoration and they dismiss it out of hand, you're talking to someone who is blithely saying that there are legions of people, not just like one guy, who are all lying about their shared collective visionary experiences. Now, it's easy for a skeptic to refute Lucy Mack Smith saying that, Joseph came and talked to me and said, I learned for myself that Presbyterianism is not true. It's easy for them to refute it because they'll say, well, of course she's going to say that. She's his mom. She didn't tell us what day he said it. She's saying it 25 years after the fact. So of course she's going to write that. Of course she's going to say it. That doesn't prove that it happened. And so, skeptics can deny those kinds of events. So the first level of this kind of skepticism is the kind of just reject everything, anything that they say is false and everybody's a liar. That's kind of the first level, right? So, well, Joseph Smith said he saw God. Nope, he didn't. He's a liar and he made it up because he just wanted to get people to follow him, right? So in that first level of skepticism, Joseph is, and I don't mean to like put these in levels like one's better or worse. I'm not like doing Dante's Rings of Hell here. Although maybe, you know what? You're probably in Dante's Rings of Hell listening to this. But the reality of the matter is these people are rejecting without evidence and without really explanation everything out of hand. I mean, everything. So Joseph said that he found gold plates. Obviously he didn't. He's lying about that. Joseph said an angel appeared to him. He's lying about that. So in that first level of skepticism, Joseph Smith is a con artist who never, ever had any spiritual manifestations or inclinations. Joseph is inventing the fact that he had those experiences to try to gain credence. But of course, he didn't have any because he didn't, and he's a con man and he made it up, right? So this is, the level where most anti-Mormons operate, honestly. Joseph Smith's a liar. Joseph Smith made it up. Joseph Smith's a liar. Joseph Smith made it up. Now, it's easy for someone who just wants to reject everything that there is about Latter-day Saints to say things like that. What is much more difficult for them to do is to demonstrate that through what historians call evidence. I know I'm a little tongue-in-cheek when I say that, but so for instance, an antagonist on the internet, who didn't bother to listen to Kristy's Corner before they went to go publish their YouTube rant against the church. They are going to say things like, have you ever looked at View of the Hebrews? And it talks about how I got to get into it's not quite, is that extreme anti-Mormonism? Probably. Yeah. So it's a guy who's he's pulling a 720, View of the Hebrews.
So that was a little bit different. That's subreddit anti-Mormon. He's more of the whispering anti-Mormon.
Right. Well, so that person's like, have you ever, looked at View of the Hebrews? I mean, it talks about how the Indians are all descended from the Jews. And so that proves that Joseph Smith just stole the whole Book of Mormon from View of the Hebrews. Now, if you're a Latter-day Saint who has never, ever heard of View of the Hebrews, and no one's ever told you that idea existed. And we've covered it on a podcast. Richard could pull it up, but we won't because that's the kind of people we are. I mean, look, Richard will say he's going to pull it up.
Yeah. I'm gonna pull it up.
I think it's one of the early arguments against Joseph Smith, the late war ones, isn't it?
Yeah, no, these are the late war in View of the Hebrews. Late war is for sure. You want to see Gerrit's dander up. It's an
angry Gerrit podcast.
View of the Hebrews is like, all right, let's talk about it. Late war is like, you get out of here.
Yeah, late war is you're a liar and you lie about the lies that you lie about.
Why do you lie? Oh, yeah,
why do you lie? Why do you lie? So look, that can someone says that and someone's like, I didn't know that. So there was a book that was already published that said that Indians were descended from the house of Israel, right? And so when that strikes someone as a surprise, then that person's like, yeah, and the church has been lying to you about it the whole time. That's where the whole Book of Mormon came from. It's always important at that point of that extreme anti-Mormonism to stop and to ask yourself, or see if you can find the answer, do any credible PhD historians believe that the View of the Hebrews that book is the origin of the Book of Mormon? Because let's say I grant you View of the Hebrews. I'm giving you, here's View of the Hebrews. I give it all to you. I wrap it up in a nice package. Richard creates a fake segment on the podcast for it, and you have View of the Hebrews and you have it all day long. I grant to you the idea that Joseph Smith just stole the idea of Israelites coming to America from View of the Hebrews. Now, there's all kinds of problems with that. One of them being that we have no idea whether or not Joseph ever read it, and there aren't any, similar phrases or writing. But if I grant you that, okay, so now Joseph has the idea that Israelites came to America. Where do the other 600 pages of the book come from? Because the problem with the Book of Mormon isn't that, I don't know how anyone could have come up with this idea. I mean, we talked about this when we talked about the Bunyan, right? The John Bunyan stories, right? That the problem isn't like, and like Joseph wrote a book where there were like good people and bad people, and the good people had to fight against the bad people. And that's like exactly like literally every Greek mythology. I mean, like, of course, if you're looking for watered down, tangential similarities, you can find something like that. But none of those things writes the book. Okay? You can believe that Joseph got the idea of Israelites coming to America from View of the Hebrews all day long. That doesn't write Alma 5. It doesn't write Moroni 10. It doesn't put these multiple different complex and complicated narratives into the book. And so scholars, like actual scholars, not, your Uncle Bill in the basement of his mom's house, that actual scholars don't make that as an argument. You won't find a history of the United States that includes, references to the Book of Mormon and the rise of Latter-day Saints and the Book of Mormon that says, but we all know that like the only place the Book of Mormon came from was like View of the Hebrews and stuff. Like, that's not in there. So why isn't it in there? So this is where we have to be much more critical of the arguments that people are making to us and reject them on their face. You're telling me, because View of the Hebrews has an idea in it that is also represented in the Book of Mormon, that therefore that's where the Book of Mormon came from. Well, if that's true, why are you the one telling me that? And not someone who's a Harvard professor. Because it's not a good argument. Because you still have the problem of where does the text come from? Now, I know I've gotten derailed a little bit from Tanya's question, and that's going to happen. And that's all we actually do, I think. People ask.
We get derailed. I find a Cyrillic R, throw it on the end of Kristy's corner, and away we go.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, so that idea, I mean, the book itself is already a hugely problematic thing. How do you explain it away? But then what do you do about the shared collective visionary experiences? So I can say all I want. Joe Smith lied about the angel appearing to him in his room, and then he lied again about it appearing in his room, and then he lied again and again and again. And Joe just lies, and every other day Joe's like, yeah, an angel appeared to me, and Joe's just a liar. Like, again, that helps you sleep at night if you're an apostate or an anti-Mormon. Yeah. But how do you explain the fact that Martin Harris says that he saw an angel too? That David Whitmer says that he saw an angel? And that even though these people like Oliver Cowdery, David Whitmer, and Martin Harris are persecuted for the remainder of their lives for claiming that they saw an angel, Oliver Cowdery loses an election solely based on the fact that he claims he saw an angel. And the very fact that it's hurting them that they say they saw it, even after they're out of the church. Well, why? Why are they saying they saw an angel? Again, an anti-Mormon say, well, they're just also lying. Okay. Now what about all the people who were in the School of the Prophets room when the Savior and the Father appeared to them? And we have contemporary accounts in the minutes of the church of many of the brethren present had a heavenly vision of the Savior. Are they also all lying? I mean, are all the 8 witnesses lying that they lifted the plates? I mean, after a while, to maintain this kind of weak argument that Joseph Smith just made everything up, it's impossible without Joseph having hundreds of co-conspirators. And it is actually a fairly unique thing. I've talked about this before, that when a historian's doing religious history, it's not their job to figure out whether or not a revelation actually happened, right? So when Mother Ann Lee, the founder of the Shakers, when she says she had a revelation from God, a historian does not sit down and say, well, she says she had a revelation, but I know she didn't because, like, why would God tell people that they couldn't get married? I mean, we don't try to decide whether or not that revelation was true. What do? We try to figure out whether or not she actually believed what she told people. Now, sometimes people will say things they don't actually believe. It happens, as I said before, with politicians all the time. This is going to come as a great surprise in 21st century America, but in the 19th century, it was a pretty regular occurrence that a politician would say something publicly and then privately write a letter and say, I don't actually agree with this at all. I just said that so that people would be okay with it.
Well, with the rare exception of Rebecca's dad.
Oh, look, are there modern politicians who've saved us from the Rolf-hating selves that we were? Yes. Who were willing to speak truth to power. We came in hot saying that Rolf was an evil Nazi and that he turned in the whole family, and with kindness. With
love and kindness.
With love.
Yes.
Yeah. He gently pushed back, educating us.
And kindness and refreshments at the play.
Yeah. I want to be wrong again, just so he will once again take me to the play and get me refreshments. But the interesting aspect of all of this, right? I know nothing's interesting is what you're thinking, but is we have all of Joseph Smith's documents. Okay. I mean, obviously we're going to still find some. There's 12,000 of them. In all of them, Joseph Smith really seems to believe he was called by God. Now, from a historian's perspective, just from a historian, not this historian, but any other historian, that doesn't prove Joseph was called by God. What does it prove? It proves that Joseph believes he was called by God. And that is very, very, very different than that basic first level of skepticism and anti-Mormonism that is saying Joseph made everything up. Joseph pretended that he had plates, never had plates. Joseph said he had an angel appear to him, never had an angel appear to him. But a lot of that gets tied up in the fact that, okay, you want to say that Joseph is just crazy. Well, maybe Joseph's crazy. Maybe he just thinks that he saw God, but he never did. Okay. Well, how did his crazy infect Sidney Rigdon and Oliver Cowdery to the point where they saw Jesus and they saw the Father and they saw many of these things? Well, Sidney Rigdon did. And then Oliver saw Moses, Elias, and Elijah. And this is not just a one-time thing. When Oliver Cowdery is trying to get back into the church, he's writing letters back and forth with some of the faithful members. And he talks about the fact that, yeah, I was super sensitive to some of the things that have been said about me since he's apostatized, right? And clearly there were things that were over the top, that people said things that Cowdery wasn't actually guilty of, even though there were some things that he was. And what's Cowdery's response? If you'd had Peter's hands on your head, you'd be just as sensitive as I am, right? Even in Cowdery's own defense of his actions, he's saying, hey, these miraculous events all happen. If you had talked to John the Baptist, like I've talked to John the Baptist, you wouldn't really take it too kindly when someone called you a liar, because you would have been in the presence of John the Baptist and Peter and James and John. And so one of the things that I think is actually one of the best arguments for the veracity of the restoration is that there are multiple shared visionary experiences where it's not just Joseph alone, it's Joseph and other people. And none of those other people ever claim that it was a sham and that those visions didn't happen. Now, when you say, what about these other groups? So we have a lot of that. Now, you know who else has an awful lot of shared visionary experiences? The New Testament church, where, Paul, has his personal experience with Jesus, but Jesus also appears above 500 brethren at once. He appears to more than one disciple on the road to Emmaus. He, not only appears and speaks to Thomas, and says, here, thrust the hand in, but he speaks to all of the 12. He has the multiple women who see and speak with Jesus. You have multiple shared experiences with the resurrected Lord. And I think back to the point that the atheist Richard referenced is he was saying, look, there's as many eyewitnesses of the miracles that Latter-day Saints claim from the time that they were, I'm sure he said Mormon, but from the time that Latter-day Saints claim that they were organized as there are from the New Testament. And there's even more so. They've got 11 people who said they've seen plates. They've got dozens of people who said they've seen angels. There's all kinds of miraculous claims. Now, of course, he's going to poo-poo it and say, well, no one, all these things are false. But it is a big deal that you can't just blithely explain away Joseph's revelations, Joseph's experiences, the same way you could with other religious people. Back to Mother Ann Lee. If Mother Ann Lee says she had a revelation, a historian says, this is what Mother Ann Lee said. She said she had a revelation, ... And it leaves the door open for, well, Mother Ann Lee might be very sincere, but she also might be very sincerely wrong. Ann White says that she received revelation. She's the founder of the Seventh-day Adventists. And she might very well believe it. a historian just says this is what Ann White said happened. We don't attempt to try to say, well, obviously it didn't. So there's lots of people who claim to have had powerful spiritual experiences or revelations or even visions in other religions. It is much more rare for people to claim that they had a shared collective visionary experience. As it relates to the offshoots that you talk about, there are certainly people who apostatize and create their own churches and claim to have miraculous manifestations. One of these is James Strang. James Strang claims that he's received revelations. He claims that he has had revealed knowledge. But those claims were all personal, right? So he's going to claim that he had visions and very well, so someone could say, a historian, that he did, but there's not a shared collective visionary experience. Now, there is a shared experience among James Strang. When he finds the Vori plates, there are 5 people with him when he finds the plates who swear an affidavit that they saw the plates when he found them. Now, several of them will later apostatize and then claim that they actually didn't. And, there's all kinds of stuff going on there. I don't have time to go into all of it. But of course, someone could easily say, well, yeah, they were with him when he found them. But if he's the one who made them and hid them there, then I guess he had a pretty good idea he was going to find them, didn't he? And so that's not miraculous. It's not miraculous to find the plates with 5 other people if in fact you're the one who buried them there. Now, I'm not saying that happened or didn't. I'm saying that's not a shared that's not an angel coming down from heaven and saying these plates were translated by the power of God, which is what you have with the Book of Mormon. Sidney Rigdon is going to claim to receive revelations later in life, but he's not going to claim a shared collective visionary experience. One of my favorite, and we've already talked about him, I think, a little bit before, is my favorite. Why would I say he's my favorite? I hate this guy. I mean, you're not supposed to hate anyone, but also kind of, is Gladden Bishop.
Oh, he's my favorite too. Yeah.
He's your favorite?
Oh,
I think it's just his name's Bishop, right?
Gladden.
Oh, you know what? Do you think he likes singing, There's Sunshine in My Soul Today? Or
Yeah. I'm sure that he did.
He could make the pathway bright. I mean, what you'd think he'd be just barrels of fun. Gladden Bishop.
With a name like Gladden, I don't mean to judge a person by their name, but Gladden suggests a rotund figure. Was he a larger individual?
No, he was svelte.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, for a while. I don't know what
I know 7 or 8 Gladdens. They're all heavy, so maybe that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So when you were in school, there were like 19 Gladdens.
Gladden 1, Gladden 2.
When you went to the gift shop at the end of a museum and they had the little license plates, like 90 of them were Gladden and 1 Richard. Is that what you're saying happened?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
By the way, in my life, I have never been able to buy one of those license plates.
Yeah, of course not, Gerrit. It's not happening.
Yeah.
Same for our son Rigdon, by the way.
No Rigdons, but Andrew and Richard just killing it.
Yeah, Max, Lily, Parker.
I don't know, Lily probably not spelled the right way.
No, it's spelled the wrong way, but we count it.
No, okay, so she's just willing to have a license plate with her name spelled wrong.
Well, it's Utah, so we spell it with a silent Q, obviously, but
yeah, we spell it with the ampersand and a number sign. It's one of our favorite things to do. Look at our diversity. I'm gonna use an exclamation point in the name Gerrit. So Gladden Bishop is going to claim multiple visionary experiences. I mean, he is going to he's the guy who gets excommunicated like every other week from the church. And after one of his excommunications, he is going to write a a little pamphlet, a little book, talking about all the visionary experiences that he's had as he's condemning the 12 for not properly following him. It's called An Address to the Sons and Daughters of Zion Scattered Abroad Through All the Earth. I think actually his first name is Francis, by the way. He just goes by his middle name, which is Gladden. So I can only assume Gladden's actually not a first name. It's probably the surname of his mother, before she was married. And so Francis Gladden Bishop, but he went by Gladden. So, okay. He must have decided that's what he wanted to do. In fact, people who followed him were called Gladdenites.
Oh yeah, you're gonna want to be an ite of that, and if he was an apostle, it'd be F. Gladden Bishop, which is got a good
F.
ring to
Gladden Bishop. Yep, you're. I don't want the Francis. Yeah. So he's going to claim multiple visionary experiences. So, for instance, he's going to say that that the crown, he goes on a rant about how the crown that's talked about in Revelations is a literal crown, and that it's important that you know what it looks like. This comes across as crazy, right? But this is what he says, page 12 of his pamphlet, right? Now this crown of life was shown unto me by the holy angel, is composed of two crowns representing the two priesthoods. One is called the crown of Israel and the other is called the crown of glory, right? So he's claiming that an angel came down and showed him these crowns. It's not stated how many crowns are on the head in Revelation 19:12. It's not stated how many crowns were on his head either in the first or second quotation. But as the crowns represent the priesthood, which are two only, of course there are only two. I said the first crown was the crown of Israel, and it is so called because it represents the 12 tribes of Israel, as it's composed of silver and gold and curiously wrought into stars, and adorned with 12 precious stones of the same kind as those in Aaron's breastplate, and also the two stones of the Urim and Thummim, all of which are curiously set on the border of the crown. So he's just going on and on and on about how an angel came down and showed him this crown, and that this is something that you definitely need to know about. That it's something that's key. It's key to the understanding, and he's going to talk about having the same experiences that Joseph had. So, and in doing so, by the way, he's going to mock James Strang as well. So, be prepared for that. And I will say here that the Lord has set forth the proclamation as the flying rail of only to fulfill the prophecy reading it. But to be the basis of faith in all things. For who can so minutely describe the sacred things and translate the title page of the sealed record? So he claims he's now translating the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon, which is a great place to go, don't you think? And also a few of the characters that were translated from the Book of Life without seeing them. Indeed, who dare attempt such a thing unless God commands it? Has such a thing ever been attempted by any person before? Some may say that the Beaver Island prophet, that's James Strang, has been pretending to translate the sealed record, but he did not say that they were fine. Did he not say that they were fine brass instead of gold, which, if so, plainly shows he knows nothing about the sealed record, and it also shows his ignorance of the Book of Mormon. Perhaps it is proper to remark here, lest some might look for the Colorado prophet or some other pretender to possess this at the same time, that it was never given into the hands of any other person after Joseph returned them to the angel, until, with the other sacred things, by the same angel, it was brought to me. For he said unto me, and as to a further disposition of them, see the last clause of the third paragraph of the proclamation. Now, as to myself and all the first elders of the Church of Christ under Joseph, we are all well acquainted with me, and cannot in reason believe that I would attempt to deceive in this matter, for my moral character has to this day stood unblemished. Well, I don't know how many times you have to be excommunicated before your moral character is at least, I don't know, somewhat called into question. I mean, I feel like, how many freebies do you get on excommunication before someone has the right to go, I don't know that you're always right, Gladden. I mean, what do you think? What's the number? What's the over-under on excommunications before you can start to say, you know what, Gladden, a little watery?
7?
Well, I think he's still surpassed it. So I think
that's what I'm saying.
I think he's still, with 6 excommunications, I was like, he has never committed a sin. He got to 7, and I'm like, okay, maybe he has.
Well, the early church, though, I mean, they're coming and going a little bit,
Yeah, you're coming and going. So he's making a very big claim that he actually has all of the things that were brought to Joseph are now brought to him. He says that he's going to showcase them. He never actually showcases them. So in answer to Tanya's question about the offshoot branches, there are lots of people who claim prophetic authority and revelation, and many that claim that they've even had visitations, but they're not claiming them as shared collective experiences. And that's the same. I mean, look, as far as I know, I am not someone who is attending every one of, Denver Snuffers, meetings. Okay. I know that you wish I was, but I'm not. So, maybe at some point he's claimed to have had a shared collective visionary experience, but from what I know, he's claiming that he's been visited by Jesus on dozens and dozens and dozens of occasions, but it's a singular experience. It's him claiming that he had the experience and then telling other people about it. And he'll say, well, that's the same thing that Joseph Smith said. It is true that that's the same thing Joseph Smith said for the first vision, but then Joseph had multiple shared visionary experiences. And they're important because they demonstrate that Joseph isn't just making things up on the fly. Joseph isn't just claiming because it sounds good, as many anti-Mormons will say, well, yeah, Joseph just invented that Peter, James, and John came. That's why he doesn't talk about them until later, because they didn't really come. Well, why is Oliver Cowdery talking about it then? Because he's also lying about it. Okay, well, why is Sidney Rigdon saying that he saw the kingdoms of glory? Because he's also lying about it. He's also saying it's just a lie. Well, what about all the people who see the angels at the Kirtland temple? It says they're also lying. And what about all the people in the school? They're also, it's just everybody. When the answer to every evidence that's presented to you is that every single person is lying, but you actually don't have evidence that they're lying. You don't have just, accounts where they contradict one another. You don't have accounts where they say, yeah, I didn't really believe. You're just saying, you're taking it upon yourself to say that they're a liar. That's unisom anti-Mormonism. That's you claiming that you've had some kind of special insight, which would be a revelation, by the way, that goes beyond the sources that exist. You don't have a source that proves that Oliver Cowdery never saw an angel and never saw the place. You don't have that source. So if you're going to state it categorically, talk about taking things without evidence. The greatest misnomer among anti-Mormons is the claim that, these Latter-day Saints, they believe everything and they won't even look at the evidence. It's ridiculous. Well, claiming that those visionary experiences didn't happen is a rejection of the evidence without any kind of explanation about why you're rejecting it. And if the reason why you're rejecting it is, I find it pretty hard to believe, well, that's duly noted and not surprising from someone who's faithless. I believe faithless loser was something that we coined, not in Christy's corner. That's
no, never.
The faithless loser corner. That's one that we probably should hold back on. But from that person who's faithless, you're claiming something for which you don't actually have evidence. Oh, you've got a lot of it stands to reason. Well, I mean, I know if an angel appeared to me, I would say this. First of all, you don't know what would happen if an angel appeared to you. And second of all, even what you're saying, you can't prove. You can't ever prove your way to the gospel being true. But certainly, a lot of the arguments that people put up claiming that it's obviously not are just so shallow and so watery and so lacking any actual source. You don't find historians, again, that's different than Bill in his basement with his computer. You don't find historians saying that it's obvious that Martin Harris and David Whitmer and Oliver Cowdery lied about ever seeing the angel. You don't find historians saying that. Now, a historian's going to say, well, these people claimed that they saw an angel, and they claim the angel told them that. They're going to put it like that. But they're not going to provide evidence that it didn't happen, and it's not because they care about our church. It's because they don't have a way of saying that. Now, they might provide, many years later, a recent excommunicant from the church claimed that he overheard in a conversation that Martin Harris said that he never saw the plates or the angel, but Martin Harris himself and all the accounts we have never says that. I mean, so yeah, a historian might provide that context. Well, look, there is someone who later claimed that they heard Martin Harris said it, but that's a really bad source. And so I'll let you know it exists, but it's a bad source because it's not coming from the person who talked about it. And I mean, we would have to go through every single apostate sect to make sure that that's the case. But at least in general, I mean, the Bickertonites are not claiming that they had a shared collective visionary experience. The William McClellan's not claiming that he's had additional shared collective visionary experiences. A lot of them are claiming that they've had revelations, but none of them are claiming that they've seen angels with other people. And so I think that gets to the point of what Tanya was saying. Remember, though, for all the great evidence that there is, the only way that you can actually know these things are true is through the Holy Spirit. And that requires you wanting to believe and you opening your heart to the Holy Spirit and letting it speak to you. And you won't get answers for everything, but at least hopefully you recognize at times, whoever you are out there listening, that a lot of the arguments that just get regurgitated on social media and here's on this reel and here's a TikTok, they're such terrible arguments. And they're terrible because historians aren't making them. And that's how you know they're terrible. If your argument is so good, if it's so powerful, if it's so overwhelming, why isn't a historian making it? Why is it a clown who's a keyboard warrior? So thank you so much for joining us, and we will eventually get to more emails, but probably not. We apologize we can't get to all of them. We are drowning in missionary emails. We're getting 100 a week. I mean, how many are we getting, Richard? Is it
yeah,
4?
crud. I added 67 new missionaries to the Google Drive today and yesterday. So
I have
great.
Some more names for you, in fact, too. So it's going to be more
San Diego.
It's going to be more. There's going to be more than that. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Standard of Truth podcast, hosted by historian Dr. Gerrit Dirkmaat and Dr. Richard Leduc. If you know of anybody that could benefit from the material in this episode, please share it with them. Until next time.